If this story hit you somewhere real, hit that like button before you keep reading, and subscribe, because there's more where this came from. My wife didn't tell me I wasn't invited to her birthday party. She explained it, calmly, patiently, like a business decision that simply made the most sense given the circumstances. That distinction matters because explanations are worse than arguments. Arguments mean someone still cares enough to fight. Explanations mean the conclusion was already reached before you walked into the room. My name is Reed Calloway. I'm 50 years old. I've been a paramedic for 26 years, and in those 26 years I have pulled people out of collapsed vehicles, resuscitated overdose victims on bathroom floors at 3 in the morning, held arterial pressure on wounds that would have killed a man inside 4 minutes. I have, by any reasonable measure, spent my adult life doing something that matters, but apparently that's not the same as doing something that impresses. The party invitation list had been sitting on the kitchen counter for nearly 2 weeks. I watched it grow longer each day, almost involuntarily, the way you watch something without acknowledging you're watching it, because you already sense where it's going and aren't ready to confirm it yet. Rebecca's colleagues from the marketing consultancy, their husbands, men with corner offices and investment portfolios, and the kind of watches that announce themselves before introductions do. A couple who owned a Mediterranean restaurant downtown that everyone pretended was discovering for the first time. People who existed in the particular world my wife had spent the last decade constructing around herself. I read the list carefully. I was not on it. 3 days before the party, I asked her directly. We were both in the kitchen. She was scrolling her phone, probably reviewing venue details or coordinating with the caterer. I'd come off a double shift and still had the particular chemical smell of emergency medicine in my clothes, antiseptic and urgency, the smell of someone's worst day becoming someone else's routine. I poured myself a glass of water and asked what time she needed me there Saturday. She didn't look up immediately. When she did, her expression wasn't the one I'd been bracing for. There was no irritation in it, no discomfort. She looked at me the way you look at a task you've been deferring. You're not coming, she said. I thought I'd misheard. I said mi pareja. Rebecca set her phone down. She turned to face me fully and folded her hands on the counter, the posture of someone who had rehearsed this moment and was not going to be knocked off script by my confusion. Her voice was measured even, like she was briefing a colleague rather than speaking to the man she'd been married to for 23 years. All of my friends' husbands are successful, Reed. Doctors, executives, men who've built things. You've been a paramedic for 26 years. Same position, same salary range, same route to the same station. She paused. I'm ashamed of you. I don't want to feel embarrassed on my own birthday. It's better if you don't come. There are things that hit you differently when they arrive with total calm behind them. A raised voice is theater. It reveals the speaker's limits as much as anything else. But a statement delivered without inflection, without hesitation, without the decency of even a passing apology, that lands in a different register entirely. I stood at the kitchen counter in my work uniform, a glass of water in my hand, and let the words settle. I see, I said. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for understanding, Rebecca replied, and picked up her phone. I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself, or my career, or the 26 years behind it. What would be the point? You cannot reason someone into respecting what they've decided to dismiss. And somewhere beneath the initial impact of her words was something harder and more clarifying. I had just received, in complete and unmistakable terms, a picture of exactly who I was to her. That information was worth something. I intended to use it. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because she asked me to. Because lying beside someone who has just told you they're ashamed of you feels worse than any floor. Saturday arrived. I watched Rebecca prepare for the party from the doorway of our bedroom. The burgundy dress chosen for effect, the makeup applied in 3 careful passes, the perfume that cost more than a shift's pay. She was precise and deliberate about all of it, the way people are when the performance matters. You'll be fine? She asked, grabbing her clutch without quite meeting my eyes. Completely fine, I said. She kissed my cheek, quickly, already mentally at the venue, and walked out. I listened to her car back out of the driveway and pull onto the street. Then I sat in the silence of the house, the same house we bought 18 years ago, when our son Marcus was 8 and our daughter Claire was barely walking. Back when being a paramedic was something Rebecca used to mention at dinner parties with something that resembled pride. Back when the fact that I ran toward danger while other people ran away was a story worth telling, not a liability to manage. I opened my laptop and created a new folder. I named it Documentation. I typed the date, then one line, excluded from wife's birthday party. Reason given, career embarrassment. I didn't know exactly what I was building yet. I only knew one thing with the kind of certainty that doesn't require examination. I would never again apologize for having spent my life trying to save people. And if that made me ordinary in someone's eyes, then that judgment said everything about the person making it and nothing about the work. The morning after the party, Rebecca came downstairs humming. Actually humming. The way you move through a house when the night before went exactly as you'd hoped, and the world still belongs to you. She poured her coffee, scrolled through her phone, smiled at photographs. Everyone had such an incredible time, she said, without looking up. The whole evening was perfect. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my own coffee. I'm glad, I said. She glanced at me then, picking up something in the flatness of my tone. Don't do this, Reed. Do what? Make this into something. We discussed it. You understood. I took a slow sip. I understood that you're ashamed of what I do for a living. That's not the same as being comfortable with it. Those are different things. Rebecca set her phone down with the small, controlled sigh of someone who has decided I was being dramatic. This is about optics, about perception. At our age, people expect a certain alignment between partners. Alignment with what? Success, she said, like it was a word I should already know. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Marcus, our 26-year-old son, who worked downtown at Sterling Financial Group in a world of portfolio meetings and expense lunches. The text was brief. Can we talk? Coming over for lunch. He arrived around noon in his work suit, carrying himself with the particular confidence of someone who had decided where he stood before he arrived. Rebecca made sandwiches and played the gracious hostess. We sat in the living room. Mom told me about the birthday situation, Marcus began. She said you two are navigating some differences around career expectations and lifestyle alignment. That's one way to frame it, I said. Dad, look, I respect what you do. I do. But Mom has a point. 26 years in the same position. No supervisory track, no advancement, no advanced degree. Meanwhile, she's built a career, a network, a reputation. He paused. You could have done more. You could have moved into administration. Instead, you stayed in the field. You chose to stay small. Stayed small. My own son at my kitchen table using those exact words. I looked at him for a long moment. I thought about the 6-year-old I'd brought back from cardiac arrest 2 weeks earlier. I thought about 26 years of deciding, every single shift, that other people's lives were worth showing up for. I see, I said, standing. Is there anything else? Rebecca reached over and touched Marcus's hand. Your father needs to hear this from someone he can't dismiss. I looked at both of them sitting together. My wife and my son, unified in their assessment of my choices, satisfied with their verdict. I thought about the double shifts I'd worked while Rebecca finished her graduate degree. I thought about Marcus's college tuition, paid in part with money earned driving an ambulance through parts of this city that most people in that room would never visit. I'll keep that in mind, I said, and went upstairs. I added to the documentation folder. Son Marcus sides with mother. Characterizes father's career as staying small. Mother visibly pleased by this support. Then I opened a new document. I titled it Financial Records, and I began pulling statements I should have been tracking far more carefully. It took 3 days to find it. 3 days of reviewing credit card records, bank statements, retirement account history, loan documents, The entire paper architecture of a shared life, more revealing than most people ever realize until they actually look. What I found made the air leave the room. A Visa card I'd never seen, opened 2 years earlier, in my name using my social security number. Current balance, $47,000. The transaction history told a story with no ambiguity. Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus. High-end day spas, the kind of restaurants that require reservations weeks in advance, all of it consistent with Rebecca's life, her circle, the image she maintained mi pareja carefully for the colleagues and clients and dinner party guests who apparently defined her worth. I was still processing this when my phone buzzed. Claire, our 19-year-old daughter, away at Boulder. Dad, can you call me? It's important. I called immediately. I got an email from the financial aid office, Claire said. Her voice was tight in a way I recognized from childhood, the way she sounded when something had frightened her but she was trying to hold it together. There's a problem with my spring tuition payment, the money from the college fund. They're saying it didn't come through. My chest went cold. The account you and Mom set up when I was born, she continued. It was supposed to cover all 4 years, but they're saying the account is nearly empty. Dad, there's only $8,000 left. There should be over $60,000. I closed my eyes. Don't worry about it, I said. I'll look into it. You focus on school. I've got this. I logged into the college savings account as soon as we hung up. Claire was right. $8,247. I pulled up the transaction history. Over the past 3 years, regular withdrawals, $5,000 here, $7,500 there. All of them transferred to the same account. Rebecca's personal checking. I downloaded everything, printed it, added it to the documentation folder. That evening, I was waiting in the living room when she came home. I had the Visa statement on one side of the coffee table and the college fund records on the other. Rebecca came through the front door and stopped when she saw my face. We need to talk, I said. About what? Already defensive before she'd seen anything. I held up the Visa statement. About this card, opened 2 years ago in my name, with my social security number, carrying $47,000 in debt I knew nothing about. Her face went pale, then flushed in the specific sequence of someone whose rehearsed response was falling apart before they could use it. I can explain, and this. I held up the college fund records. $62,000 set aside over 19 years for Claire's education. You've been withdrawing it, transferring it to your personal account. I kept my voice level. For spa treatments and designer clothes and dinners with clients, that's what Claire's future looked like to you. I borrowed it, Rebecca said quickly. I was going to replace it. That's not borrowing, that's fraud. Opening credit accounts in someone's name without their knowledge is identity theft. Emptying your child's college fund for personal expenses is theft. I set both documents on the table. Those aren't strong words, they're the accurate ones. Her posture shifted from defensive to something harder. Don't you dare lecture me about financial decisions. Do you have any idea what it costs to maintain the visibility my career requires? The events, the wardrobe, the restaurants, these aren't luxuries. They're investments in a professional identity. You think clients want to hire someone who shops at budget stores? Mi pareja you stole from Claire, I said. I invested in opportunities your salary couldn't provide. Her voice had the particular quality of someone who has told themselves a story long enough that they no longer hear how it sounds to anyone else. Someone in this marriage had to think bigger than month-to-month survival. I stood up and gathered the papers. Claire needs $52,000 to cover her remaining tuition. You are going to find a way to replace what you took. Every dollar. Rebecca laughed, a short, brittle sound. With what? You want me to pull it from the air? I don't care where it comes from. You took it, you restore it. Or I take these documents to a lawyer and we discuss what criminal financial fraud looks like in this state. The color left her face. Try me, I said quietly and walked upstairs. I called Claire. Your tuition will be covered, I promise you that. Don't lose 1 minute of sleep over it. Dad, her voice was careful. What's going on? Mom's been acting strange for weeks. And I saw the birthday photos on Instagram. You weren't in any of them. We're working through some things. Is it bad? It's complicated, I said, but you're not involved in it and it won't affect your school. I've got you. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began researching divorce attorneys. Not because the decision was finalized, but because when the person you've spent 23 years trusting turns out to be a stranger who's been operating a parallel life inside your own, you start needing to understand your options, and you start needing to do it quietly. Thursday morning opened like any other shift. I reported to Station 9 at 6, checked the rig, reviewed the schedule. My partner Danny was already running through equipment checks, 2 coffees waiting on the dashboard. "You look rough," he said. "Long week," I replied. The call came in at 9:47. Overdose, residential address in Lakewood. Male, 23 years old, unresponsive. We were on scene in 6 minutes. He was on the bathroom floor, lips blue, no pulse. His mother was in the hallway, a sound coming out of her that wasn't quite screaming and wasn't quite words. I started compressions while Danny administered the first dose of naloxone. Nothing. Second dose. Nothing. "Come on," I said under my breath. Not to anyone in the room, just to the situation. "Come on." Third dose. And then a gasp. Sudden, involuntary, the body remembering that it wants to be alive. Eyes opened. His mother collapsed against the wall in a kind of relief that I've only ever seen in that specific context, that moment when something lost comes back. We transported him to Lutheran Medical Center, vitals stabilizing, good outcome. As we loaded him into the ambulance, his mother grabbed my arm with both hands. She looked at me with the expression that never becomes routine no matter how many times you see it. "You saved my son," she said. "Thank you, thank you." Back at the station, Danny was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Do you ever actually think about what we do, like sit with it?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "That kid is 23 years old right now, because you pushed through that third dose when most guys would have called time." Danny shook his head slowly. "That's another 40 years that mother gets, all because you showed up." I didn't answer. I was thinking about Rebecca's words, something that actually matters. That afternoon, Captain Holloway called me into his office. He was 58, graying at the temples, the kind of man who communicated respect through directness rather than warmth. He'd been in emergency services for 32 years. He closed the door. "Sit down, Carter." I sat. "I heard from Lutheran this morning," he said, "about the overdose case. The ER attending wanted to pass along a formal commendation. Said your field protocol was textbook. Just doing the job, Cap." "Yeah, well," he leaned back. "I've been meaning to talk to you anyway. The county is launching a community first response initiative, first aid education, overdose response training, schools, churches, community centers, businesses. They want an experienced paramedic to build and run the program. Split role, half field work, half instruction, small pay increase. More importantly, visibility, recognition, reach." He paused. "I recommended you." I looked at him. Me, 26 years clean, good with people, can actually explain what you're doing while you're doing it. It's yours if you want it. He let a beat pass. "Reed, you've been doing this job longer than most guys last. Maybe it's time the work started speaking at the volume it deserves." When I got home that evening, Rebecca was at the kitchen table with her laptop. "How was work?" she asked. "Kept a 23-year-old alive," I said. His mother seemed to think that mattered. She caught something in my tone. "What does that mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like." I poured a glass of water. "Also, I was offered a position heading the county's new community first response program. For the first time in months, I had her full attention." "Does it pay more?" "Some." "How much more?" "Enough," I said. "Though that's not why I'd take it." She closed her laptop. "Then why would you?" I looked at her across the kitchen. Really looked, the way you look at someone when you've stopped editing what you see. Because maybe it's time to stop apologizing for this work and start letting people see what it's actually worth. Something moved through her expression. Not quite fear, close to it. 2 weeks later, Rebecca announced she was hosting a dinner party. Important clients, the Wentworths, who owned a regional car dealership group. the Pratt Hardings, venture capital, and one guest who occupied particular prominence in her planning, a man named Douglas Sheridan, recently separated, owner of a chain of luxury automotive operations across the state, freshly signed to a major contract with Rebecca's consultancy. "I need you there," she said Tuesday evening. "But please, be pleasant. Don't talk too much about work," meaning don't mention I'm a paramedic, meaning be tactful, she corrected. "These people are important to my career." Saturday evening, I wore slacks and a button-down. Rebecca wore a dress that probably cost what I make in a week and a half. Hair done, jewelry deliberate. She'd hired a catering service. Nothing had been left to chance. Douglas Sheridan arrived last, carrying a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's car payments and wearing the confident looseness of a man who had never had a request declined in recent memory. He was 52, physically maintained, silver-haired. "Joanna," he said, greeting Rebecca with a kiss on the cheek that lasted a fraction of a second too long. "You look extraordinary." "This is my husband, Reed," Rebecca said, in the tone you use to introduce a piece of furniture that came with the house. Douglas shook my hand. "What line of work are you in?" Before I could answer, Rebecca stepped forward. "Reed works in emergency services." "Emergency services," Douglas repeated. "Admirable. Management or field?" "Field," I said. "I'm a paramedic, 26 years. Something moved across Douglas's expression, not dismissal exactly, but the particular readjustment of expectations when someone doesn't fit the frame. "That's dedicated. The compensation can't be easy to work with." Rebecca laughed, that specific sound I'd come to associate with moments when I was being managed rather than supported. The dinner proceeded on its trajectory. Douglas circled back to me at intervals throughout the evening. "Do you ever worry about retirement security on a paramedic's salary? Have you considered hospital administration, better compensation, more prestige?" And through all of it, Rebecca laughed along. Sometimes she added her own observations about our financial ceiling and my lack of upward momentum. After dinner, the guests moved to the living room with coffee. Douglas had positioned himself beside Rebecca on the sofa. He was telling a story about closing a significant deal, and she was listening with the full, lit-up attention she hadn't given me in months, touching his forearm at intervals, laughing at exactly the right moments. "I'm hosting an event at the Broadmoor next month," Douglas said, looking at Rebecca with unmistakable interest. "Corporate leadership, industry people, you should come." A pause. "Bring Reed if his schedule allows." The way he said "if his schedule allows" was precise about his preference. "That sounds wonderful," Rebecca said, her face opening in a way I hadn't seen since I couldn't remember when. I stood up. "I have an early call tomorrow," I said. "Excuse me." No one made a move to stop me. Around 11, the guests left. When Rebecca came upstairs, she was smiling in a way she wasn't trying to modulate. "That went extremely well," she said. "I'm sure it did," I said. She caught my tone. "Don't start." "Start what?" "Noticing that your client spent most of the evening working to remind everyone in the room that I'm beneath this household." He was being friendly. "It's called networking." "It's called something else," I said. "And you were participating." "You're jealous and insecure," she said, moving toward the bathroom. "Douglas is a very significant client. If you can't manage yourself around successful men, that's your problem to solve, not mine." She closed the bathroom door. I opened my laptop. Wife openly encouraged extended physical contact and exclusive personal attention from client Douglas Sheridan in our home. Joined in public commentary about husband's career limitations. Dismissed husband's concerns as personal insecurity. Accepted invitation to exclusive out-of-town event. I was building something. Every document in that folder felt like a foundation stone being set into place, methodical and permanent, for something I would need when the time was right. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Official county letterhead, the Jefferson County seal embossed at the top. I opened it standing by the mailbox, still in my uniform from a night shift. "Dear Mr. Calloway, We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected to receive the Jefferson County Emergency Services Excellence Award in recognition of your 26 years of dedicated service and your foundational role in establishing the Community First Response Education Initiative. I read it twice. The ceremony would be held in 4 weeks at the County Administration Building. The governor would be presenting, local media would be covering. I called Captain Holloway. Did you know about this, Cap? I may have submitted a rather thorough recommendation letter, he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Congratulations, Reed, it is well deserved. When I got home, Rebecca was wrapping up a conference call in the kitchen. I waited until she finished, then placed the letter on the table in front of her. She read it. For one moment, brief, unguarded, I saw something in her face that looked like genuine surprise. Maybe even something resembling pride. Then it recalibrated into something else. Calculation. This is significant, she said slowly. The governor, media coverage. She set the letter down. We need to think about presentation, a new dress, who to invite. This could generate real visibility. Visibility. You told me you were ashamed of me, I said quietly. You excluded me from your birthday because I'm just an ordinary paramedic. Now there's an award and a camera crew, and suddenly you're talking about brand alignment. I'm trying to be supportive, she said. You're trying to manage the optics. There's a gap between those. Her face tightened. Fine, be bitter, but this reflects on both of us. We're married. People will expect me to be there. You can come, I said. But understand something, Rebecca. This award is not your redemption. It's not proof that I was worth your attention after all. It's recognition for work I've been doing while you were deciding I was embarrassing. And I won't let you rewrite that history just because there are cameras in the room. I walked away and left her sitting with the letter open, already composing herself for the photographs she'd been planning. The county's public relations office called 2 days later. Pre-ceremony interview, local paper feature, possibly a brief television segment. We'd love to include family, the coordinator said. It makes for a stronger human interest angle. Let me think about that, I said. The article ran 2 weeks before the ceremony. They'd interviewed Captain Holloway, gathered quotes from people I'd treated, pulled statistics on the new education program. The headline, Local Paramedic Honored for 26 Years of Life-Saving Service. Rebecca saw it online before I got home. She had it open on her laptop when I came through the door. This is excellent press, she said. I've already had people from work mention it. I'm glad your colleagues are impressed, I said. Reed, can we please move past this? I said things I shouldn't have. I was under pressure, but this award demonstrates something real. Can't we just accept this moment for what it is? I looked at the woman across the kitchen from me, the woman who had stolen from our daughter's education fund, who had opened credit cards in my name, who had spent months telling me I was something to be managed rather than someone to be proud of, who had sat on our living room sofa encouraging a man to humiliate me in my own house. You can come to the ceremony, I said, but don't expect it to change what's already been documented. Remember that in the description and in the pinned comment you have all our supplements, from fitness to health in every sense of the word. Take care of yourself the way the people in this story had to learn to. The call from Captain Holloway came the following Monday morning. Reed, can you come by? Something I think you should hear in person. When I arrived, there was a man in Holloway's office I didn't immediately recognize. Mid-50s, well-dressed in the manner of someone who doesn't think about it. He carried himself with the unassuming steadiness of a person who no longer needs to announce anything. Holloway introduced him, James Whitfield. Mr. Whitfield was in a multiple vehicle accident on the interstate 8 years ago, Holloway said. Winter conditions, you were on scene. Recognition moved through me. 5 cars, black ice, a man trapped in a sedan with the steering column pressed into his chest. We'd had a narrow window. I never properly thanked you, Whitfield said. When I saw the article about the award, I tracked down your captain. He paused. I'm the CEO of Mountain States Medical Supply. We're building a division, emergency response training for schools, corporations, community organizations. We need someone with real field experience to lead it. He held my eye. Director of Community Safety Education. Starting salary of $95,000, full benefits, company vehicle. Instead of saving one person at a time, you'd be training hundreds of people who will collectively save thousands. $95,000, nearly double my current salary. I'd have to leave the ambulance, I said. You'd be multiplying everything the ambulance taught you, Whitfield said. We'd like you in position within 2 months, after your ceremony, after things settle. After he left, I sat with Holloway for a moment. That's life-changing money, Holloway said quietly, especially for someone who may be navigating significant changes soon. He leaned forward. Reed, nobody would blame you for taking this. It's not stepping away from the mission. It's scaling it. That evening, the business card was on the kitchen table when Rebecca came home. She picked it up. Read it. Mountain States Medical Supply, she said. Director position. She looked at me. What salary? 95 to start. Her eyes changed. Not pride, something adjacent to calculation but moving fast. For a moment, I watched her reorganize everything she thought she knew about this situation. Reed, she said, this is exactly what we needed. This is the level that would make you comfortable presenting me to your friends. I finished. She paused. That's not it's what you said 3 months ago, I told her. You said you were ashamed of me. You said your friends' husbands were successful and I wasn't. You excluded me from your birthday. You sat in our living room while another man spent an evening itemizing my failures to our dinner guests, and you laughed. I kept my voice even. And now there's a salary attached to my name, and suddenly the story changes. She set the card down. I'm trying to move forward. I know, I said. We'll talk about what that looks like soon. Claire came home the week before the ceremony for spring break. She looked thinner than I remembered. Stress had a way of settling into her face that I recognized and hated. She hugged me at the door and then held me at arm's length. Dad, you look exhausted, she said. Long few months, I admitted. What's actually happening? You two aren't even pretending anymore. I saw the birthday photos. You weren't there. You're not in any of them. I'd been trying to protect her from the full shape of it, but she was 19, not a child. And she deserved the honest version. Your mother and I are dealing with some serious issues, I said. Financial issues, respect issues. We're working through what comes next. Working through it, Claire repeated. Dad, she didn't invite you to her birthday. That's not 2 people working through something. That's 1 person already gone. Over the following days, I watched Claire interact with Rebecca. The distance between them was visible. At dinner Wednesday night, Rebecca mentioned the upcoming ceremony with the practiced brightness of someone setting a scene. It'll be lovely to have the family together, she said. Marcus is coming. We should take photos. Make it a real occasion. For your social media, Claire said quietly. Rebecca's fork paused. Excuse me, you're excited about Dad's award because it makes you look good, Claire said. Not because you're actually proud of him. The way you talk about Dad's work changed exactly when there was something in it for your image. That's not pride. That's management. The next morning, I found Claire in the kitchen before 7, coffee already made, looking like sleep had been mostly theoretical. I did something last night, she said, without preamble. I'm not sure if I should tell you. Tell me, I said. She pulled out her phone. Mom was in her bedroom on the phone. I could hear her through the door. She was laughing. I don't know why I did it. I just started recording. She pressed play. Rebecca's voice came through clearly, unmistakably. No, he doesn't suspect a thing. The timing on this award is actually perfect. It makes everything look stable from the outside. Of course I'll be there for the cameras. A pause, a laugh. Douglas, you're terrible. Yes, I know. After the ceremony, we can start actually talking about next steps. He's my parefa caught up in his little program. He doesn't see what's right in front of him. The recording was 4 minutes long. Rebecca discussing Douglas Sheridan, planning something that involved waiting until after the ceremony, laughing about my obliviousness. The phrase next steps used with the easy familiarity of a conversation that had been happening for a long time. Claire's eyes were wet. Dad, I'm mi pare sorry. I wanted to be wrong. I pulled her into a hug and held on for a moment. You did exactly the right thing, I said. Send me that recording. And I need you to promise me something. Don't let her know you have this. Not yet. Are you going to leave her? I thought about that. About 23 years. About what I'd found in the financial records. About what I'd just heard on that recording. I'm going to do what's right for me and for you, I said. On my terms, not hers. That afternoon I met with an attorney. Patricia Renner, recommended by Captain Holloway. I brought everything. The credit card statements, the college fund depletion, the financial records, the documentation folder, and now the recording. She listened without interruption, then asked several precise questions. Mr. Calloway, she said finally, you have substantial grounds. Financial fraud, identity theft, strong circumstantial evidence of adultery, and a recording that is damaging in ways her attorney is not going to enjoy. She folded her hands. File now, or file strategically. The ceremony is in 2 weeks. What do you recommend? The ceremony works in your favor. Public recognition, media presence, it establishes you as the sympathetic party in any contested proceeding. It also means she attends believing everything is fine. She paused. What do you want from this? I want out, I said, cleanly, without destroying anyone unnecessarily. Admirable. Don't let that nobility cost you what you're legally entitled to. She stole from your daughter's education. She committed fraud in your name. Those are not minor things. I left her office with a strategy. Wait for the ceremony. Let Rebecca stand in the moment she'd decided mattered. Let her smile for the photographs she'd been planning since the letter arrived. And then move. Not revenge. Necessity. Because I'd learned something over these months. Quiet dignity is not the same as passive acceptance. There is a moment, always exactly one, when a person who has been systematically underestimated must decide whether to stay small in the way that was required of them or to become precisely as large as the evidence actually supports. I had spent 26 years showing up. It was time to show exactly what that looked like. That night I saved the recording to 3 separate locations. Rebecca came home late, slightly flushed, smelling like expensive wine and a cologne that wasn't mine. She kissed my cheek in passing. Good day? I asked. Very productive, she said, smiling. Good, I said, and I meant it, for reasons she didn't yet understand. The Jefferson County Administration Building was full on ceremony night. Camera crews along the back wall. Local officials in the front rows, 3 other recipients ahead of me on the program. I stood backstage in my dress uniform, hands steady, mind clearer than it had been in months. Rebecca had arrived early with Marcus. She'd positioned herself in the second row, angle calculated for photographs. Marcus sat beside her looking like exactly the version of success she'd always wanted the family to project. Claire was in the back row with Captain Holloway and colleagues from the station. She'd texted me 30 minutes before, I'm here for you, Dad. Not for the show. The ceremony moved through the first 3 recipients. Then the moderator's voice carried through the room. Please welcome Reed Calloway, recipient of the Jefferson County Emergency Services Excellence Award. I walked to the podium. The county commissioner shook my hand, placed the plaque in my hands. Cameras flashed. I stepped to the microphone and let the room settle. Thank you, I said. 26 years ago, I chose to become a paramedic because I wanted to be present at the moments that matter most. The moments when everything else falls away and what remains is whether someone shows up or doesn't. I could see Rebecca in the second row. Her smile was positioned for the cameras. What I've learned over those years is that the work isn't always visible. Sometimes it's carrying someone's fear with them when they have no one else. Sometimes it's teaching a teenager CPR in a community center on a Tuesday night and knowing, statistically, that they will use it someday. Sometimes it's just being the person who doesn't leave. I paused. People ask who supported me through this, who was beside me when the work was invisible and the compensation was modest and the recognition was rare. I saw Rebecca lean forward slightly. I want to thank Captain Holloway, who taught me that real leadership is service in its quietest form. My colleagues at Station 9 who have stood with me through more calls than I can count. The community members who trusted me with the people they love most. And my daughter Claire, who has always understood that some things matter more than how they look. I did not mention Rebecca. I did not mention Marcus. The silence that followed the omission was its own kind of statement. I also want to say something I don't often say out loud, I continued. Not everyone values this work. There are people who look at 26 years of emergency medicine and see a ceiling rather than a foundation. People who measure worth in salaries and social positioning. People who look at a paramedic and see someone who stayed small. Rebecca's smile had gone still. It was still technically on her face. It had stopped being connected to anything. What I know, what this work has taught me in ways that nothing else could, is that real worth is not determined by who acknowledges it. I have spent 26 years in service to people who were having the worst moments of their lives. I would make that choice again without hesitation. I lifted the plaque. This award honors 26 years of service, but more than that, it honors a principle, that purpose outlasts prestige, that showing up for others is not ordinary, it is extraordinary, and no one's embarrassment can make it otherwise. The applause built slowly at first. Then it grew. People stood, not everyone, but enough that the sound of it filled the room from the back, where Claire was clapping with her whole body, eyes bright, beside Captain Holloway, who was nodding with quiet satisfaction. I stepped back from the podium and walked directly toward the back of the room. I hugged Claire first, then shook Holloway's hand, then greeted my colleagues one by one. I did not go to Rebecca. During the reception, she found me near the far wall, away from the cameras. Her voice was very quiet and very controlled. You humiliated me. In front of everyone, on camera. I told the truth, I said. That's not humiliation. That's just honesty you hadn't planned for. You made it sound like I was never in your corner. You told me you were ashamed of me, I said. You excluded me from your birthday. You sat at our dinner table and let another man spend an evening reminding our guests what I earn. You laughed. I kept my voice even, conversational, the register of someone discussing something that has already been decided. I'm not angry, Rebecca. I'm just refusing to pretend a different version of events for the benefit of anyone in this room. Her jaw tightened. We'll talk about this at home. We'll talk about it with lawyers, I said. I filed this morning. You'll be served tomorrow. The color left her face. I have documentation of the credit card fraud, I continued. The college fund withdrawals, your communications with Douglas Sheridan, including the recording Claire made. I paused. You stole from our daughter's education. You committed identity theft in my name. You spent months planning your exit while presenting stability for the cameras. Those things have legal consequences. I looked at her steadily. I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm done. And I'm done quietly, because that's the way I do things. Claire recorded me, she whispered. Our daughter heard you planning a future without me and decided I had a right to know the truth, I said. She was correct. Rebecca looked around the room, at the cameras, the officials, the gathered community members, several of whom had glanced toward us with the instinct of people sensing that something significant was happening nearby. Attorneys, I said again gently. That's where this goes now. I'm taking the position at Mountain States. I'm moving forward. You can do the same, once everything is properly settled. I walked to the exit. Claire was waiting near the door, coat already on, watching me with the expression of someone who has been holding their breath. I reached her. She hugged me without ceremony, the way Claire has always done things, directly, without performance. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, and I meant it with a precision I hadn't felt in longer than I could measure. Let's go. The divorce took 4 months to finalize. Rebecca contested the framing initially, but her attorney reviewed the documentation and advised her to settle. The credit card debt was reassigned to her in full. She was required to restore the college fund to its full balance. I retained the house. She kept her retirement account and moved into an apartment near her offices. Marcus was largely absent during the process. He'd made his assessment months earlier, and maintaining it while the actual facts surfaced required more flexibility than he'd budgeted for. That hurt. It will probably hurt for a while. But you cannot force someone to examine a conclusion they've invested in. Claire stayed close through all of it. At the dissolution hearing, when I signed the final paperwork, she was in the waiting room with coffee and a look that said she knew exactly what it cost and considered it the right expenditure. I started the Mountain States position in September, harder than I'd anticipated and more satisfying than I'd allowed myself to hope. By the end of the first year, we'd reached over 800 community members. The math on downstream lives potentially saved was something I let myself think about on quiet evenings. Rebecca's consultancy let her go 6 months after the divorce. I heard she'd relocated to Phoenix. Douglas Sheridan lost interest quickly once the professional arrangement dissolved. Claire graduated from Boulder with distinction in the spring. At the celebration dinner I hosted at the house, she pulled me to the kitchen while the other guests were in the yard. "Dad," she said, "I want to say something. Say it. I'm proud of you. Not because of the award or the new job or any of the things that ended up validating you in ways other people could see. I'm proud because when everything was being used to make you feel small, you kept a record. You stayed methodical. You didn't blow up or collapse or disappear." She looked at me the way Claire has always looked at things, directly, without flinching. "You were exactly the person I needed you to be." I looked at my daughter, at the person she'd become. "You were the one who brought me the recording," I said. "You chose truth when it would have been easier not to." I learned something from that too. She hugged me for a long time without speaking. At 50 years old, I understand something about worth that I wish I'd understood at 30. The value of what you do is not determined by whether the person standing across the kitchen from you chooses to see it. You can spend 26 years running toward danger while others run away and have someone look at that record and call it ordinary. You can build a life that matters, measurably, documentably, in ways that cannot be contested, and have someone who shares your bed decide it doesn't count because it doesn't photograph well at dinner parties. That says nothing about you. It says everything about the lens. I chose eventually to stop trying to correct the lens. I chose instead to document the truth, protect the people who deserved protecting, and build something new on the foundation of what had always been real. That foundation held. It held because it was built on 26 years of showing up. Not for recognition, not for approval, because showing up was the right thing to do, and doing the right thing, quietly, consistently, without an audience, is not ordinary. It never was. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below. I read every single one. Like the video if you'd share it with someone who needed to hear this. Subscribe if you want more stories about people who chose integrity when it would have been easier to disappear, and share this with someone who's been made to feel small for doing something that genuinely matters. They deserve to know they're not alone.